we know that cannabis hemp replaces many mainstream industries such as paper, textiles, energy. The list goes on and on. Biofuels, what have you. It's a miracle plant. We agree on that. With all of the industries lobbying, corruption, bribery, on our political system, is it going to be the same old struggle that we've had for the last, what, 60, 70 years, since we know with the history
Well,
of criminalization?
well, that's why, I mean, that is actually the precise reason I formed this lobbying group, and, hopefully I can
Counter.
yeah, to kind of counter, because there's, and actually when I went to Columbia undergrad, and my major was political science, and my thesis was, which was like a 150-page document, which was on why the legalization movement hasn't succeeded politically. And then at law school, actually, I did my thesis, which is actually on the Harvard Law School electronic library. We could go to it even and show people. It's called On the Right to Get High, which is a constitutional argument.
There you are.
Okay, if we get on
It's
Google.
it's your show.
Well, can you show me how to get onto Google from?
Basically,
I'll show you guys the document. But if we, learning from like the super PAC and PACs and the whole thing, basically what we need to do is I need to raise money for my group, because my group would be a little different than other groups, because we're conscious of this, how, a lot of other groups talk about drug law reform. Our group is about there should be no criminal penalties for the use, sales, or distribution of any drug.
Agreed.
And we should return to a system like in the beginning of the 20th century involving taxation and strict liability purity laws.
Wow.
So that's, and so here, let's see.
There you go. You can just.
So if you, and then say I'm going to get high. And actually, you can kind of read this argument, but I think that if I can raise money through this, and then we can unite with other groups, and then try to start affecting political elections, just like the super PACs do.
Bribe them.
Then, that's what. Then we
Pretty
can get.
much
And also, the thing is, the other thing is that what I talked about in my paper too, at least in my other one, was that I have a strategy that the other people haven't used, which is not just a libertarian argument of like cost benefit, but that it's immoral to put people behind bars, to have them become informants, to actually degrade communities by creating informant cultures, and that the drug war is immoral, and that the moral thing to do is to end the drug war. And that approach hasn't really been taken yet. It's always been about cost benefits, and so that's the kind of heart of my, and also harm reduction as an answer, as opposed to a sobriety only approach. So there's some people who are so sober, and other people that want to, like if they're injecting heroin, that they should be, say not injecting and smoking it, or that they should be seeing a doctor. The way that there's other models like in London and England that have been used.
Exactly.
They're obviously much better than what we have, and we could heal our society, and also the generations of people who come from drug users who need to be healed and not just treated as the way that they've been treated, under our, laws for the last 100 years.
Yeah, that's pretty much a draconian kind of, you go to jail first before you get rehab, and in fact, no rehab at all in some cases. I'm 5 years off the meth. I'm 20 years off of alcohol, and incidentally, you have to work your program if you're trying to get off that stuff. Okay.
And it's also fair, what's really sad is that here they're spending, and I mean, we're doing like marijuana trials. Like we just did a marijuana trial lasted 19 days. The average cost per courtroom is $10,000 to $15,000 per day.
Yeah.
They're closing courtrooms down, and they don't. And there's actually, so that's like they spent on this case. By the way, my client had like one misdemeanor on his record. He was growing 200 plants he was doing crossbreeding and growing for himself and his.
The
sick
ultimate
brother.
crime.
Yeah, and a sick brother who had formerly been an OxyContin addict. They spent over a couple $100,000 on this case, and yet they're, for my clients who want to get rehab for free, it is like long waiting lists, and it has to accompany in court a plea, oftentimes.
Right.
In order to get, and still so there's like absolutely like no. Or very hard to find. There's no Salvation Army rehabs. There's some, but you have to be on waiting list for months.
Right.
And instead, the money is being used to prosecute cases. And there's like nobody that's in charge who's looking at this macroscopically. And I just actually gave a lecture. We can actually go to the lecture if you want online.
Sure. Where was it?
It was if you go to I think you'll be able to find it, like CEB, Allison Margolin.
CEB.
Yeah, I gave a lecture to the bar. on medical marijuana. I was sitting next to one of the attorney general. Yeah.
That's the one?
The second one. Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
Right.
I'll copy the link and I'll send it to the folks in the chat.
So you guys can see this was like a, and actually soon there's going to be a video made that will be available of the lecture. And by the way, you can go online right now and for $4.20 you can see, you can download your own lecture instead of paying. This actual lecture, the bar got $500 a pop for this lecture I did, and then other people did.
Oh, nice.
My website, $4.20 for my hour-long lecture on medical marijuana laws. But anyway, the point is I sat next to the attorney representative from the AG's office at this lecture, and I said to him, where is like the oversight? I mean, you're supposed to, the AG isn't supposed, the Attorney General's office, aren't they supposed to have oversight of the district attorneys and like on a macroscopic level say, how's money being spent? What's going on here? And he said, no, that doesn't really happen. And then, you know, he was kind of like cowarding away. And it's just a shame that there's money being spent and there's no oversight of this in the DA's office. And I'd like to actually change that. I would like to set up a meeting with the newly appointed Jackie Lacey and ask her if she would consider allowing there to be a committee meetup of criminal lawyers and DAs and talk about how there can be kind of like oversight and some kind of oversight as to how money's being spent, what cases are being prosecuted, because it's really absurd, and money is fungible, and money that's being used to prosecute this could be used for rehabs, could be used for education, for after-school programs for the sons and daughters of people who are meth addicts or in jail. Right. I mean,
yes,
so
yes, anyway. We agree. The waste of resources on this, quote, war on drugs, or whatever war you want to wage it on, I suppose, has been ridiculous. In fact, the validity, real quick and we'll wrap it up, the validity of the DEA, the validity of Scheduling 1 for marijuana has always been questioned since it's been put there by a non-convicted felon.
And you know, right
Richard
now,
Nixon is pretty much
exactly.
You know, war criminal and all that.
No, it's true. Actually, it's interesting you said two things. Well, today, unfortunately, the DEA raided 3, I just learned this because, you know, on the medical marijuana news, they raided 3 dispensaries in Los Angeles, even at the same. Now, what's really upsetting as a Californian is that because and this is my theory, because the DAs have taken a hardline position on this against the will of California voters and even the legislature that's allowed for sales, they've allowed U.S. attorneys who aren't being brought in by the locals in Colorado and Washington to come into California, and on a bureaucratic politics level, the DEA can sustain itself by California because we're inviting them in. Whereas in Washington, and here Obama's saying, okay, we're just going to leave Colorado, Washington alone. Well, that's because the DAs are not going to the feds in Washington and Colorado and saying, come in and start busting our people.
Interesting.
Yeah, whereas here, the district attorneys are misinterpreting the California laws deliberately, which is against their duty to do justice, and in doing so, inviting in the feds to say, oh, all these people are violating California law so you can prosecute them. And then, of course, the DEA wants to continue to exist.
Right.
And
why?
Well, because they haven't figured out how to create new jobs for themselves in a world that doesn't revolve around the smell of marijuana as probable cause.
Now remember, their argument against regulation is they don't.
It's before the Court of Appeals right now in D.C. By the way, this Schedule 1 status, and actually this could end.
Oh, so they're arguing it now.
Yeah, actually the Court of Appeals just actually had oral testimony on this. And then now they just asked for a briefing schedule.
Smile. We can do that.